The UN describes them as one of the most persecuted minorities in the world. Yet the suffering of Myanmar's Rohingya population increases. Are the world's democracies ignoring their plight? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Sami Zaidan. Well, they've been persecuted and discriminated against for decades, but few can even pronounce their name, let alone know their plight. Buddhist attacks on Myanmar's Rohingya Muslims have picked up in the last few weeks following the rape of a Buddhist woman. Well, human rights groups say security forces are also involved in the attacks. Thousands of Rohingyas have fled to Bangladesh, but thousands more have been refused entry. Well, for those who do make it across the border, their troubles are far from over. Nicholas Huck has their story in this exclusive report.
This is what the Bangladeshi authorities don't want you to see. 300,000 Muslim Rohingya refugees from Myanmar living in makeshift camps along the Bangladesh border. Officially, Bangladeshi authorities do not recognize their existence, but in reality, Rohingyas are tolerated and are known as unregistered refugees. Entering this camp is restricted. Only a handful of international aid agencies work in these camps. They don't want to be filmed or named. They say if the world finds out what's happening here, then the Bangladeshi authorities will react by shutting their aid operation down, and these Rohingya refugees will no longer receive any aid. There's no electricity, no drinking water. The refugees are not allowed to work, go to school, or see a doctor.
The Rohingyas are the world's most forgotten, abused people. The international community has not done its job over the years. But at the same time, just a year ago, the Bangladeshi government refused a $33 million UN program to assist the local communities.
No one is allowed out of these camps, but most do because food aid is not enough. Those who can find illegal work or sell the only thing they have, their food rations. Rohingya children suffer from malnutrition and diseases. Young girls as young as 14 are pushed into selling sex for money.
No woman wants to do this, but I'm also a mother, and I would do anything to have the money to buy food to feed my children.
This is one of the most deprived regions in one of the poorest countries in the world. Life for Bangladeshis living outside the camps isn't much better. Locals resent these Rohingya refugees because of the little help they do receive.
We don't have enough ourselves. They are a burden to all of us. We don't want them here.
Bangladesh border guards are ordered to push Rohingya refugees away. Thousands have been forced back to Myanmar. Still, they keep coming. Last month, sectarian violence left scores injured and 80 dead. Officially, ethnic clashes have stopped, but these refugees who have just arrived say the violence continues.
The police and the army randomly attack us. It's clear they don't want us around.
Myanmar's President Thein Sein says the solution to ethnic enmity in Myanmar's western Rakhine state is to either send the Rohingya to a third country or have the UNHCR look after them. But like Myanmar, Bangladesh doesn't want Rohingyas in its country. They're stateless, waiting for freedom to come and peace to settle. Nicholas Hawk, Al Jazeera, Kutupalong, along the Bangladesh-Myanmar border.
Myanmar's President Thein Sein told the United Nations last week the solution is to either send millions of the Rohingya to another country or have the agency itself look after them. Well, he said, we will take responsibility for ethnic nationalities, but it is not at all possible to recognise the illegal border-crossing Rohingyas who are not of our ethnicity. Well, President Thein Sein added the conflict is also a threat to the democratic and economic reforms his government has launched, warning that stability and peace, the democratization process and the development of the country, which are in transition right now, could be severely affected and much would be lost. So is the plight of the Rohingya being deliberately ignored? Well, to answer the question, we're joined by our guests. In Jeddah, Mohamed Nour, he's a Rohingya political activist. In London, Brad Adams, he's the Executive Director of the Asia Division of Human Rights Watch. Also in London, Justin Wintle, a historian and the author of Perfect Hostage, a biography of opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi. And on the phone line from Jeddah, Dina Madani from the Muslim Minorities and Communities Department in the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation. Thanks for all of you for joining us. Let's start, if we could, with Justin. What is at the heart of this conflict? Why have the Rohingyas been persecuted for so long?
Well, it's such a complicated question, really. Like all these situations which breed communal violence, it goes back in history. Rakhine State was originally Arakan, and it sort of lay uncomfortably between the British Empire in India and its later acquisition of Burma as a colony in the early 19th century. For a long time it was actually ruled by the East India Company, the British East India Company, but then after the East India Company dissolved, it was passed over to the colonial authorities in Burma. Now, the tension is the essence of the communal tension is between the Muslim population of Rakhine State and the Buddhist Arakan or Rakhine people, who are essentially Burman people, part of that big majority, 60% of people in Myanmar, Burma. And it goes back, and there's been the English-British brought down a lot of seasonal labourers from Chittagong in Bengal to do farm work, and some of them stayed, and this was during the 19th century and early 20th century and so forth. So that's one big group.
So basically we're talking about a group of an ethnic group brought into the country who the rest don't want to be there. Let's
well, hang on. I mean, there've been Muslims there for centuries. The first were probably Arab traders. There are Muslim families who are called Rohingyas, who've been there for many generations. But then you've got some newer incomers as well. So there are various levels, as it were.
Right. It's going to get a little complicated if we try and explain all the levels. Brad, if we perhaps fast forward a little bit to more recent times, I mean, that conflict seemed to be dying down up until a while ago. Why did it pick up in the last few weeks? What's launched the latest rounds of Buddhist attacks on Rohingyas?
Well, it's flared up periodically, so this is not completely new. But in May, there was an allegation that some Muslim men raped a Buddhist woman. And the Buddhist community reacted very strongly. About a week later, 10 Muslim men were pulled off a bus and slaughtered. There was a reaction then from the Rohingya community to defend itself. And then we had what is called communal violence, each side attacking each other. And for the first few days, which is in early June, both communities were responsible. It's impossible to go back and be sure of exactly what happened, but it's clear that both communities attacked the other. But after that, starting around June 12th, the authorities came in on the side of the Buddhists, the Arakan Buddhists, and have been carrying out fairly systematic discriminatory policies since. There have been killings. There has been large-scale roundups of particularly young men from the Muslim community. And this kind of talk we heard from the president about deportation or segregation picked up by a lot, very sadly, of the democracy leaders in Burma. Not all, of course, but some, including some icons, have said some very disturbing things. So there's a lot of latent prejudice, racism, whatever you want to call it, inside Burma towards this community. And it's playing out right now. It's not over by any means. It's a tinderbox, and it could blow up at any time.
It could blow up any time. Let's go to Mohamed. Do you feel, as a Rohingya Muslim, do you feel let down by the outside world, particularly by the Muslim world?
Yes, exactly. We are here in Jeddah, which is almost considered the capital city of all Muslims and where OIC also reside. And the rest of the world, the violence has been going on for almost about 6-7 weeks now. And now only we are talking about in mainstream media. And OIC is have not moved forward in any way. We have not seen any significant changes on the ground. Every day calls are coming from Burma. People are crying, and people are being tortured, and women are being raped, and things are continuously going. At the same time, not only the Muslim community, international community also kept quiet, because there are more than 60 million people in Burma, which they are about to open up their economic sanction, and everyone is want to go in and to do their business. But I think international community and Muslim community all together is all as a human. We are all responsible for the massacre, and it is not an ethnic cleansing. It is not only 5,000 people who are dead. It's more than 30, 40,000 people who are dead. When we talk on the ground,
Mohamed, if I could jump in,
yes.
you got a lot of points to make, but if I could pick you up on one point, since we do have a representative of the OIC in the show, I'd like to go to Dina and ask for a response to that. The call made there by Mohamed and the complaint that you often hear from Rohingyas is that even the OIC is doing little. Is that true?
Yes, thank you. Actually, I would just like to say, first of all, that we were the first to acknowledge this violence. The current state of mind, that the emergency state, where all the reporters, international reporters, were pushed out, and even intergovernmental, international humanitarian organizations were also pushed out. We have had our sources, our connections, because we have established ARU, which is the first unified umbrella for all Rohingya refugees around the world. And from there, we were able to get reports on this current violence. And what we have done is actually, His Excellency the Secretary General has urged all member states, as part of the Islamic Ummah, to reach out to our Muslim brothers who are being perpetrated against, and human rights violations are being perpetrated against, to reach out to them and to urge all member states to use international fora to collectively put pressure on Myanmar to stop the violence.
But it doesn't seem to be happening, does it, Dina?
Well, last thing that happened was His Excellency urging all member states to take action, decisive action, and actually the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the United Arab Emirates has called a special session for the Human Rights Council in Geneva to convene. They have not yet announced, but hopefully if they do announce very quickly, within 10 to 14 days, that way they can adopt all recommendations, including a commission of inquiry. And if a commission of inquiry happens, then I assure you the violence will stop.
Okay, I'd like to go back to Brad. If we look at the situation in the Western world, Brad, not only, I mean, we seem to be moving in the opposite direction. The talk is of easing the pressure and sanctions and restrictions on Myanmar, isn't it? Is that the wrong thing to do at this point?
It is, not just because of what's happened to the Rohingya, but generally in the country. There's a love fest going on right now between the West and Burma. The West basically had no relationship with Burma for many years, for decades, because of the military dictatorship in Burma, because of rampant and systematic human rights abuses. And they were really amazed that things started to change. And they have reassessed their policy, and I would say they've done it far too quickly and far too casually. Just to give you an example, Aung San Suu Kyi recently called for the West not to engage with the state-owned oil and gas company, but within days, President Obama announced a lifting of sanctions. The reason she said that is because it's going to allow hot, dirty money to come into the country and lead to further corruption. So in the context of this re-engagement that everyone's very excited about, and of course we are very happy that many democracy activists have been allowed out, that Aung San Suu Kyi has been allowed to run and gain a seat in parliament, and that her party has been legalized, there is a general amnesia about what has happened in the past, about the nature of the people who are still in power, a major misconception among many people, including the media, that Burma is now a democracy or close to being a democracy when it is not, and willingness to turn a blind eye to what's happened to the Rohingya. A year ago, if this had happened, I am sure the world would have come down very hard on the Burmese, including the Burmese president, who said really very despicable things about the Rohingya being deported or segregated. That's not part of a mature political discourse. It's actually a signal to continue to discriminate and to target the Rohingya.
All right, let's take some of those points to Mohamed. How would you respond when you hear the president of Myanmar saying things like, simply, the Rohingya are not from our ethnic group. You don't belong here. You're an illegal border crosser.
The point that I would like to make here now, the Burma got independence in 1948. There was a massacre happened earlier than that, earlier than 6 years before 1942. We were still there, and our generation were there for many decades. It is true that we are not Burmese. We are an independent state. Arakan is an independent state, and Rohingya is one of the race of Arakan, not Burma. So we do not call ourselves as a Burmese, but we are Arakanis. We belong to this land. They are the one who intervened. They are the one who are foreigners into this land. They are the one who invaded. Recently, when Thein Sein has declared this particular message that Rohingya is no longer welcomed here and they should be moved out, UNHCR should resettle, and UNHCR said this is not our problem. And at the same time in Parliament, if you would like to see some of the clips that Aung San Suu Kyi, who has been nominated in 1991 as a Nobel Peace Prize, when I personally think that this is a test for her, but if she doesn't do this well, she don't deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. I'm really sorry to say that, because when Mr. Thein Sein, President Thein Sein has declared this, she has particularly clapped on this and she has agreed on this point. And Rohingya, who have been hoping towards getting democracy, toward getting recognized in the land, and supporting Aung San Suu Kyi, and today she turned her blind eye.
Okay, let's take that point
Rohingya
up with Justin, if we could. I mean, at the heart, at the crux of this problem, I guess, is the nationality law and the refusal to recognize the Rohingya as citizens, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, why? What is the big threat to Myanmar if these people are given citizenship from the perspective of Myanmar authorities?
Yes. Okay, let's take those one at a time. It is absurd that in the 21st century you should have 750,000 people who are stateless, despite the fact that the majority of them are of fixed abode and have been for several generations. On the point about Aung San Suu Kyi, when the communal violence backlash hit the Rohingyas in Rakhine State, she came out with expressions of sympathy for them, but so far she said nothing about granting them the rights of citizenship. And I think somebody's got to do that in Myanmar, and I would wish it would her, or indeed President Thein Sein. Now, President Thein Sein at the moment is the whole business of ethnic insurgency and ethnic division has bedeviled Burmese history for decades and decades and decades. And it's not just the Rohingyas, it's the Karen, the Shan, the blah, blah, blah. And President Thein Sein, give him credit, has made national reconciliation a priority. And even this week he's been talking to ethnic leaders. Unfortunately, the Rohingyas are kind of removed from that. The suggestion that the UNHCR should be involved is absolutely right. The suggestion that they should be deported in some way is a form of ethnic cleansing, and that is a regrettable thing.
All right, if we can bring Dina back into the discussion as we're looking at, what the outside world can do here. Muslim countries in general don't have the biggest balance of trade, do they, with Myanmar? And I guess the Muslim world and members of the OIC are not the countries that Myanmar, or on top of the list of the countries that Myanmar would look to for foreign investment and so on. But couldn't members of the OIC perhaps use more of their influence with those countries that are the big trade and economic partners of Myanmar and make it an important policy consideration for them and say, look, you've got to use your influence with this country to stop this sort of persecution?
Yes, absolutely. That's why we have taken our votes to the international fora and the United Nations and human rights and called for a special session. And currently, just recently, King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz, His Majesty the King of Saudi Arabia, has called for an OIC summit to be convened at the end of Ramadan to discuss certain issues in the Islamic world, and has specifically noted the Rohingya situation, to adopt recommendations on how to go about this. But I can assure you that His Excellency, the Secretary General, used his good offices when he went to China recently and urged the Chinese government, being a very influential and one that has very strong economic ties with Myanmar, to play a positive role in bringing the end of the violence. And
what about OIC countries like member countries like Bangladesh? I mean, they don't even want to give official refuge to the Rohingya refugees, do they? Surely must have some influence with an OIC member state.
Looking at history, we can say that Bangladesh is one of the biggest countries in terms of has the most has been hosting most refugees of the Rohingyas, more than 250,000 throughout the years, and not just with today's violence. But then again, we can't just put it all on one country, can we? We have to aid. This is why we have to call on all international member states as well as the Muslim states to aid in this and to create refuge and with international organizations like the UNHCR.
I'm sorry, but I think you're protecting Bangladesh.
I'd like to clear a few things here.
Okay,
I would like to...
one at a time. I think Brad wanted to get in here first, and I'll come to you in a moment, Mohamed, if I may. Go ahead, Brad.
Yes.
Thank you. I was just in Dhaka speaking to the Bangladeshi government about this at very senior levels, at the ministerial level. And a deputy minister literally told me that we will satisfy our obligations and he picked up a bottle of water by giving a bottle of water to the people in the boats before we push them back out to sea. Now that's disgraceful. The Bangladeshi government has taken an absolutely hard and unprincipled line against the Rohingyas. And you know, it's their bad luck perhaps, but they are the neighbor of Burma. They are neighboring this part of Burma where the Rohingyas are seeking sanctuary. And it's absolutely inhumane for them to
do the
keep turning people
Bangladeshis
around.
need more help in order to absorb more, as Dina was saying? And they've taken in huge numbers. Are they being asked too much?
Absolutely, they need help. Unfortunately, 2 years ago, they turned down $33 million in international assistance to help not only the Rohingya community, but the communities in which the Rohingyas live in. They also turned down a resettlement offer from some Western countries, not very many people, but it was a start. They say that if they provide any assistance, including more than a bottle of water, they will act as a pull factor. And you know, that's just not good enough. When someone comes knocking on your door and their life is being threatened, then you must help them.
All right, Mohamed is bristling to get in here. Please go ahead.
Yes. What I would like to point out here is, Bangladesh has taken a huge effort to accommodate more than 250,000 refugees, Rohingya refugees since 19s, and now continuously doing, and international community are helping them to do that. But it does not justify. It does not justify to people who are fleeing for their country for the sake of persecution and being killed and being raped. They come on the land who are Muslim and bordered, and then push them back. Some even there are reports that border security have a fire on the boat, and some of them which have been pushed back and fired by the helicopter and by the Burmese government. It does not justify Bangladesh government to do such an act, inhuman or degrading Rohingyas into this manner.
All right,
these people
Mohamed, if I
just
could
need a land.
jump in here because time is getting a little short. Let's try and perhaps we'll take the discussion to Justin. And as we look at the future now, what ultimately is the plan, if there is one, from the Myanmar authorities and officials towards the Rohingya? Are they? Some of the allegations say that security forces are actually joining in the attacks. Do they want to drive them out the country? Keep them contained there?
The security forces, I think, have overreacted. But Thein Sein, I think, would say it's been a strenuous policing job more than anything else. It seems to be quietening down a little at the moment. In answer to your previous question, what threat are the Rohingyas and more generally the Muslim population of Rakhine State to the government and the country? And the answer to that is at the moment very little. The danger is, and they're just the first signs of it happening now, is that Islamic fundamentalists, friends of Al-Qaeda, are starting to get interested in that. And what's remarkable historically is, in fact, the Rohingyas have never mounted a full-scale insurgency campaign, unlike other ethnic minorities. But at the moment, things are heading for a situation where that could change, and it could become a seeding bed, a hotbed for for fundamentalist groups, and you would then see what's happening in southern Thailand for the last 10 years, happening in Myanmar, and I'm sure that the government doesn't want that. Therefore, it really is in its own interests for the Myanmar government to reach a fair settlement, hopefully with the support of the UNHCR.
Let's hope those final words come true. Let's thank our guests, though, now, because we are running out of time. In Jeddah, Mohamed Nour. In London, Brad Adams. Also in London, Justin Wintle. And on the phone line from Jeddah, Dina Madani. And thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. As always, you know where to send us your feedback. Email us your thoughts to insidestory@aljazeera.net. For now, it's goodbye.